slut. Oh my god, what are you doing? What are you doing?
Got away with it this time, Scott, but I'll be seeing you again.
Hello. What's going on with the sound? Is the sound a bit messed up? So I have new headphones. That might be it, but it shouldn't be it. That shouldn't be a problem. What does it sound like now? Because the mic that's connected is the same mic I've always had. I don't know. But the mic that's connected was off. Sounds like I'm at the beach. Tinny. Tinny. Oh, for God's sake, this fucking thing, honestly. I'm gonna kill someone. Is it? Oh God. Okay, right. Let's listen to it back. What I've done is installed some new headphones, but not a new mic, so I can't understand why this would. Right. Okay. We're gonna have to double. I'm gonna kill someone. Is it? Oh God. Okay, right. Let's listen to it back. The audio was playing when you're away from the mic. I think it's the headphone mic. So somehow these headphone mics are just not disabled. 1 second. I think the obvious thing to do is just this. What's it saying now? Is it normal? Does it sound normal now? because that's not supposed to, that shouldn't have happened, because it's very much the Bluetooth headphones were disabled according to Windows, but obviously that was not actually the case. Well. Here we all are, everybody. We fixed our tech issues and everything's going really well. Or is it? So this guy, I know, one of my many connections in Westminster, contacted me about this report that Commonwealth, which is a think tank, have a think tank have produced this report on who owns Britain, which is where which is about privatization essentially, and why everything has gone to shit, more or less. So a Keir voice. I don't think I can really do a Keir Starmer impression. I don't think that's in my repertoire. Oh, good. So this actually just isn't even working for me. I actually can't hear anything.
What if
Okay, maybe that was
you
just
could get your money moving with access to thousands of
God's
global
sake.
stocks?
Yeah,
Or
probably.
in your pocket.
But I want to remind myself what he sounds like.
Form the next government of this great nation.
No, I don't think I can do that accent. I'd rather not bother. So, who owns Britain, I hear you ask? So, yeah, anyway, this guy sent me this, and I figured it'd be really good to stream, actually. Because there's this puzzle in Britain, which is like, why is everything so shit and expensive? And I suppose that's not really a puzzle, that's just a question. But what I mean is, like, how does it happen that despite quite a lot of economic growth, quite a lot of technological progress, everything is still so shit? It's really strange. And like, where does the money go? This is like, why do just prices keep rising? Who gets it when prices keep rising? Like, what's actually going on here? And I think one of the answers is just actual kind of physical deterioration of our assets. That's one of the things that's like genuinely getting worse, that I don't think is picked up in traditional statistics. Well, P.S. These streams are put into a playlist on my main channel, on this channel, called 2025 Streams. If there's any good bits, I might clip them and put them on my second channel, Unlearning Economics Live. But, you know, that's only if there's good bits, which is... We'd be lucky. We'd be lucky if that were the case. Well, let's watch this, because I haven't even engaged with this, really. I only got sent it, like, yesterday. And I was going to do a stream anyway, and I was like, okay, this is a good topic.
Welcome to Rip Off Britain.
A country where families are paying more for polluted rivers, soaring bills, and unreliable trains, where essentials are unaffordable for millions, and where nothing seems to work properly anymore.
But why? It's the radical experiment that's transformed our country, the unprecedented privatisation of our essential services.
Water, energy, rail, mail, buses, housing and land. Almost nowhere in the world has been privatized as deep or as far as in Britain.
The results are now in. We were promised competition, lower bills and better services. Instead, we got corporate power, greed, and we're paying more for less.
Our bills now fund the hundreds of billions of pounds that have been sent to the shareholders of water and energy giants.
The dream of privatization has turned into the nightmare of rip-off Britain.
The public are rightly furious.
We cannot rebuild the country with an ownership model that has run it into the ground.
We can't fix things with more of the same.
Real change is still possible. We can end the rip-off, stop the profiteering, and take back real control.
And the first step is clear. Return our public services to public hands.
To find out more, explore Commonwealth's new project, Who Owns Britain, and follow us for more updates.
So, yeah. I think, yeah, there are two answers, really. It is actually that our investment has been so low for so long that our actual infrastructure has deteriorated. And I think that also goes for, like, human capital, like education and health and things like that. A lot of those outcomes have kind of started to deteriorate, certainly in some places, sometimes in places. And, yeah, so that's, like... that's one thing, that things have actually got worse. And on top of like privatization, there's austerity, which has led to collapsed roofs of schools, collapsed hospitals. Like actually the structures are physically collapsed. So that's one reason things are getting worse for the average person. But the other is inequality, isn't it? So it's like, yeah, you're paying more, but who's it going to? And it seems like that latter one. Well, actually, no. I feel like both are the focus of this report. Was it Thatcher? I mean, yeah, a lot of this was Thatcher, but some of it started before Thatcher, and the most ambitious austerity has been was the previous Conservative government. Okay. Our latest project, Who Owns Britain, explores how a radical experiment transformed our society and shapes your life. Your life. Its scale was unprecedented. Post-1980, the only advanced economies that experienced a faster and deeper decline in public wealth were those affected by the shock therapy of the post-Soviet transition. Britain's public wealth collapsed. The decline remains shocking. The UK shed public wealth at 7.4% of national income per year from 1981 to 1996. Gross public wealth fell from the highest in the G7 to the lowest, where it has stayed ever since. Right, so gross public wealth relative to national income, 47 to 23. Man, what's Japan's? Has Japan nationalized a lot of things? Or is this some other artifact of how because their public debt's really big and kind of weirdly held. I don't know if it's an artifact of that. Public wealth. Okay, I don't know what public wealth. It's like assets, obviously, but I don't know. I don't know what's going on with Japan there. Anyway, we're concerned about the UK, so yep, dropped. Weird how the USA has held steady. Look, sort of down, but then back up. Now it's actually we are lower than all of the countries. People's quality of life. Yeah. I think austerity, I mean, I don't know. For me, it's probably because it's my adult life has been defined by austerity. So I tend not to start with Thatcher, but I don't think it's wrong to start with Thatcher. I just think that story has been told a lot. Like, the changes we've experienced in the UK in the past 15 years should not be underestimated. We were promised that this unprecedented sell-off would create shareholder democracy. Instead, essential services we once held in common, energy, water, transport, are in the hands of asset managers, foreign governments, and private equity giants. One of the great ironies of privatization is when it ends up being run by foreign governments, when it's like the idea of the efficient private sector taking over from the inefficient government, and then like the Australian government or the Dutch government just ends up buying it. And there's literally no argument for it. The services we rely on are owned by an array of private interests you've probably never heard of. C.K. Hutchinson, Daniel Kretinsky, Macquarie, Ontario Teachers Pension Plan, Barty Televentures, Vanguard, First Manhattan Company, the princely family of Liechtenstein. As a result, each year, billions of pounds leak out of essential services to investors. Almost £200 billion has been paid to the shareholders of privatised water, energy, mail and transport companies since the 1990s. That money could have been used to improve services and cut bills. Now, I don't want to... there's more to see here, but 200 billion over 30 years? It's what, like... It's just like, what is it, 200 billion divided by 3, and it's like 60, then divided by 10, it's like 6 billion a year or something. Just over 6 billion a year. To water, energy, mail and transport companies. So this, I think, and I've encountered this point before, and I stress that privatization has generally been a terrible thing, and I also think it does leak money, and I also think that it's unjust. However, the magnitudes involved here, I don't think they're quite enough to explain the problem that we have. Like, yeah, it could have been used to improve services and cut bills, but a few billion a year for everything, water, energy, mail and transport. Like, what, we got 1 or 2 billion per things per year. Like, that's not that much, is it? Bear in mind, I mean, what's a benchmark would be like High Speed 2 cost like the original, let's take the original estimate for High Speed 2, it was like 36 billion to build it. Then it ended up being 3 times that. But even taking the conservative estimate, well, I think it's, Zeri, I agree with you. I think it's the mismanagement, and like, shareholders will probably mismanage these services. I think that's the bigger problem, is what I'm saying. Like, the raw numbers, I mean, I get it. It's not right. And it's some money which could have gone to better causes. But I think it's how it's run. Not that they're not talking about that. Here we are. Privatization has reduced investment in essential services. The energy sector invested twice as much under public ownership compared to the privatized era as a percentage of GDP. Energy networks routinely charge for investment that never materializes. When they say they charge for investment, charge customers. Routinely underspend. So underspend, actual underspend. Transmission and distribution percentage of non-load capital expenditure approved by Ofgem that was actually spent. Okay. So they're charging for this much and they're actually investing this much. So that was like 75. I mean, that was down to like 70% of what they said. Energy transmission between these years are not the same, but I guess that's just a data thing. Yeah. The water sector has taken out more debt than Off-White recommends every year since 2002, leaving them over-leveraged and fragile. But not a single major reservoir has been built since the water industry was privatized. I mean, that is loopy. Not a single major reservoir. So it was 91 that they were privatized, was it? So they keep taking out debt, but not building. It's interesting. Are they using this debt to pay their shareholders? Well, I don't think... Yeah, I don't... So, I've said this quite a few times. I don't think a return to the old nationalisation models is a good idea. But I also believe quite firmly in, if you're a private owner, or you have a private ownership model for something that is very clearly an essential service and a form of public service, then you should face the threat of nationalisation, even if it's temporary, if you underperform. There should be that threat hanging over you, because it is a public service. It's something that is vital to people surviving. And we've entrusted it to you on the promise that you run it better than the state. And that, in principle, is not completely ridiculous that could happen in some times and places with some industries. But clearly in the UK, that's not been the case. And so they need to feel the pain, feel the responsibility and accountability, which they don't have. But I think the privatized industry and industries and the state-run industries both follow similar models, which is that they're quite centralized. The results of chronic underinvestment are all around us. Leaking sewage, among the most expensive energy in Europe, unreliable public transport, creaking infrastructure, unaffordable essentials. A feeling the country is in decline. Yes. Underinvestment is a feature, not a bug. Private companies face higher borrowing costs. They delay investment to boost profits. Game playing with regulators creates bureaucratic delays. Companies can take on too much debt, often to reward investors, and now lack investment capacity. So for me, this is really important. The fact that you would borrow to pay shareholders, and you would borrow at a higher cost than the government could borrow at lower costs and guarantee that it would invest the money, versus the private sector borrowing at high costs and paying shareholders. That is a system doomed to fail, doomed to underinvest. Privatization drove a profound change in how we invest in our essential services and infrastructure, from physical engineering to financial engineering, from asset building to asset sweating, from investing to extracting. You know, asset sweating, does that mean like getting rid of assets, or? Oh, right. Okay, making the most of existing assets. Fine. We are captive customers who pay a double privatization premium, making essentials more expensive than they need to be. First, our bills are higher to fund shareholder payouts and expensive interest repayments. Second, as taxpayers, public subsidy backstops private profit. But what? Okay. Is there not a tripled privatization premium because of the underinvestment? They're talking about something more direct, like direct cash payments. Well, I think it's interesting that, yeah, most privatization in the UK, I think, has been that kind of cheap or easy gains through cutting staff, cutting back on costs that can easily be controlled, even if it's damaging in the long term, and that means that you make the shareholder dividend payments. Let's unpack some examples. In 2024, nearly a quarter, £416 of the average energy bill was taken as profit. Okay. In 2023, the 9 biggest electricity generators and networks spent £8 billion on dividends, buybacks, and interest payments. So £416 of your bill, 24% of it. Man, guys, what is this key? This key's like a bunch of really similar colors. Why not just have like blue, red, yellow? You know what I mean? I know it looks kind of pretty, but like which one's operating costs? I guess allowances is the most green. I get if it goes in order, maybe, so that's operating costs. That's policy costs. That's VAT. Okay. There is a logic to it. But no, wait, because there's more. Wait a second. There are more green blocks than there are in the legend. There are 3 purple blocks. Wait. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Wholesale operating cost. Is that one? Man, that's hard to. The key is horrible, but it reads left to right, then new line, but there's one missing. That's what I knew there was something. I was like looking at it, I was like, no, this doesn't add up. That's on top of the confusing. Looks like the gay flag. No, doesn't. It should look like the gay flag. It should be more colourful. Oh, wait, what's it? Wait, do you mean specifically the gay flag? What do you mean the LGBT flag? Oh, this one. Oh, yeah, it does, yeah. Huh. Almost a third of the typical water bill goes to investors in the form of dividends and interest payments. During the last decade, the rail companies have regularly paid out more than 100% of their post-tax profits in dividends. Wow. It is quite... Like, what is this? I don't know what the law is on this, but the norm seems to be that interest payments, or payments to shareholders, sorry, dividends, are like a priority, like they come out first. And the legal scholar Katharina Pistor, she wrote that book, The Code of Capital, which is about how capital is kind of protected by the law and by custom. And there's this really important issue of who is entitled to assets, who gets paid first. And it seems that whether it's a hard legal thing or more of an informal custom, we just prioritize shareholders. It's like, well, what if, maybe the shareholders suffer, they don't get paid if the company is underperforming. Like, could you imagine that? If you're looking at privatization in the UK, I'd be very interested in a comparison with the Netherlands. For example, for public transport, I think Dutch privatization worked pretty well. Yeah. Hi, Yuri, by the way. So I'm aware of train privatization working quite well in Japan. But it depends on so many things, like how much of a, cultural factors, like how obligated people feel to the collective and to the country, which I think is quite high in Japan. Probably a bit higher in the Netherlands than in the UK. I don't know. So I think there might be some comparative analysis in this report. I can't. We'll just go through the Twitter thread first, then we can investigate the data ourselves. I think the energy companies are private, K-Pass. I don't think they're public-private partnerships. They are regulated publicly. Oh, thanks, Jimmy. I'm not completely against privatization in principle, but at this stage in the UK, I'm like, even if it's just to send a shock to the system and recalibrate, I just think take most of the privatized industries out of the hands of the private sector now. Just fucking do it. Just because they've really used up any goodwill they might have had. For buses in the Netherlands, they do a quite critical re-evaluation every 5 years, not up to snuff. The private party is out. Yeah, exactly. This is it. Like, that's it. If you've got privatized essential industries, that's what you do. You strengthen the regulation. We just don't have the balls to do it. We don't have any state capacity in the UK. Almost a third of the typical water bill now goes to investors in the form of dividends and interest payments. During the last decade, I already said this. Every time we pay a utility bill or transport fare, money is redistributed upwards from ordinary people to investors. Privatization is an inequality machine. I don't doubt this. It would be nice if they had some data on who owns the shares. Maybe they do. Consider the scale of subsidy that is backstopped by the public. Around half of the income of the bus and rail industries comes from direct or indirect government support. Those industries rely on public money and still distribute dividends even when they make a loss. Yeah, this is exactly it. Like how is that allowed? If you're a shareholder, the logic behind shareholder value capitalism is that shareholders provide the money and financing for businesses so that they can invest and succeed. And the stock market where you buy shares is very liquid. So the money is very readily available, much more so than, say, a typical loan application process that is quite slow. You have to put your details in, blah, 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 blah. Shareholder value is supposed to be a little bit more dynamic. But surely, if you make an investment and it's not doing well, you don't get money back from it. That's like, what the fuck? That's like crony capitalism defined. The majority of rail industry income comes from direct and indirect government subsidies. So unsubsidized income, network rail losses, government operational support payments, net government operational support to operators. It's quite, so you can't see, so this goes from 2015 to 2023. Yeah, and like, is that a majority? I mean, they're saying it's a majority. It seems to have gone up over time, the green, the government payments, but we pay more now to the railways, I think, even in real terms, than we used to when they were nationalised. You can't see it on here because the graph doesn't go far enough back. Why is it a good idea to run things privately? Well, the idea is that money is could be more readily available in the private sector, and that the private sector is exposed to competition, which incentivizes innovation and cost reduction and everything. If we believe in private companies, why should anyone else besides the shareholders decide if the company is underperforming or not? Well, I don't know. I think that's quite simplistic, because there are so many different industries and areas of the economy that I do think that each individual industry or sector probably has its own mixture of like private and public and third sector and cooperative or whatever. The privatized industries in the UK are regulated more closely. Like, each one has a devoted regulator, so they're regulated more closely than your average industry, with the hopes that you can balance the best of privatization and the best of the public sector. I'm not saying that's what happened, obviously. As well as inequality, privatization has caused widespread dysfunctionality, fragmentation, market power, duplication, and regulatory bureaucracy have created operational inefficiencies and extra costs. Privatization broke up public services. Take transport. The separation of the train operators and the rolling stock companies. So, this is in case anybody doesn't realise how ridiculous our train system is, that the train operators are the people who drive the trains. The rolling stock companies are the people who own the trains, and they're different. Yeah, our regulators are a joke, I agree. That they're different. The people who own the trains are different than the people who drive the trains. I was about to say, imagine if you didn't own your car anymore, but I just remembered that that's what's actually happening. So the important thing is that different private actors can extract value at every stage of every process. We estimate that the additional operating costs of the passenger rail system attributable to privatisation from 1997 to 2020 totaled £79 billion. So this is 23 years. So what? 3 billion a year. Unless that's... I don't know if that's an annual figure or... I mean, for an annual figure, that would be quite high for an annual figure. That's got to be a total. In energy, electricity generators enjoyed pre-tax margins of 32% in 2024, which could have been reduced with a more rational wholesale market and balancing mechanism. Nearly half the bus industry's income comes from public subsidy, but commercial routes have fallen by 20% since 2019 due to inefficient market coordination. Before deregulation, more profitable routes could cross-subsidise others, benefiting women, the young and the poor. Despite $1.93 billion in government support during the pandemic, 1 in 5 bus routes have disappeared. Yeah, I've heard this statistic before. It's really bad because poor people use buses. Poor people actually tend not to use trains, even though we talk about trains a lot. The privateers promised a miracle: competition, lower bills and better services. Instead, we got inefficient monopolies, rising costs and worsening outcomes as ordinary people struggle to afford essentials. The dream of privatisation has turned into the nightmare of rip-off Britain. Today, it's the defenders of privatisation who are clinging to an out-of-date ideology. They're out of touch and out of time. Let's end the rip-off and take back our future. Explore our new project, Who Owns Britain, at the link below. So, I think this is basically correct. I'd be interested to see some more details on, like, counterfactuals, like whether that's like estimates of underinvestment relative to subsidies, which they included a bit of, or estimates of investment compared to nationalized industries, or estimates of investment compared to other countries. Big up Slough. Slough has a lot more bus routes. To be fair, I think Slough's doing all right. Since the days of David Brent, I think it's doing better. Rip off Britain is actually not a new term. It's not a new slogan. I think The Sun the BBC airs new series of Rip Off Britain. Man, I hate Bing. When was this aired? This looks old, doesn't it? Episodes. Oh, maybe not. Series 16. It's been a series for a long time. It began in 2009. See, it's like it's got its own Wikipedia page, Rip Off Britain. An expression used by some to refer to the phenomenon in which some products and services cost significantly more in the United Kingdom than in other countries, especially member states of the European Union and the United States, than a basic currency conversion would permit. Taxation, business costs. I don't think shipping from abroad. I don't know. This doesn't seem like a very good Wikipedia article. The aristocracy does still own the land in Britain, and probably a lot of the industry as well. It is crazy, like, just how rich some people are. Like, it's impossible to comprehend. To literally imagine just like owning loads of the land in Britain. So I don't think it's just about fraud. It's about just high prices. So this is that we were. So is this the Twitter thread or is this different? If public services are meant to be unprofitable, why allow to privatize them? Well, I don't know. Hopefully it improves outcomes. Isn't that the rationale? Imagine your house has a like, because there's like 10 people own like some ridiculous amount of the land, or 10 families. Mate, England is just nowhere near as rainy as people make out. So I heard a stat because an Italian colleague of mine was saying he lives in London, and he kind of gets annoyed at the way Italians talk about Britain. And he was saying Turin has the same amount of rain as more rain than London. Turin has more rain than London across the year. And I think Manhattan has more rain than London. I think land value taxes are a really good idea. Good for tackling wealth inequality. They're a really good way to tax wealth. And they're also probably going to have beneficial effects on like the housing sector and development. And I think they should be administered by local councils so that they that they can sort of fund their own local services and it can be used for devolution. Oh wait, sorry. This is the same. This is the same thing, more or less. Renewal requires reckoning with reality. The reality is that who owns and controls our essential services and infrastructure, the background pattern of our lives, profoundly matters. Whoever does will always have immense power over society. Power that can be converted into private wealth at the public's expense. This fact informs the purpose of Commonwealth's new project to help us understand who profits from ownership of our essential services and how we are better equipped to remake them by and for the public. We know democratic public ownership works, not only from successful publicly owned energy, housing, water and transport systems in rich and dynamic economies across the world, nor just from examples from our own past that transformed the country when public ownership built millions of homes, transformed the energy grid and upgraded our infrastructure. We know also from our present, from award-winning new municipal bus services in Nottingham. Can confirm buses in Nottingham are very nice. They're purple. Ooh. Well, I mean, that's a Platinum Jubilee one, but... Wait, where are the purple buses? That's lilac. Do they still have purple buses in Nottingham? I meant these ones. I thought they were all purple. Bad news, guys. The buses are not only purple in Nottingham anymore. Starmer's Britain. Scottish Water investing more but costing less. To public rail already beginning to deliver more reliable services. That's interesting about Scottish Water. This is not about nostalgia or a sepia-tinged vision of the past. We are not content to diagnose decline. We want to work out how things must change. Today, it is the defenders of private... Yeah, okay, so this is kind of what we've already seen. It would have been better to read it here. Private island. Let's have a look. Oh, my good lord. $2 billion, the extra interest we pay each year because of privatisation. 9% of the 2023 energy bill was paid out to shareholders and lenders through dividends and interest payments. So that's the borrowing costs. That's the 9% is the interest and... So 9%, yeah. I mean, it's enough. It's not loads. The average director pay for the privatised companies in 2024, that's 46 times the median salary. So the buses in Nottingham are very good. Interesting. What about Manchester? Manchester's got good buses. The buses and trams are free in the city centre in Manchester now. That's because of Andy Burnham, and they're yellow with bees on them. I'm going to make a proposal. The nicer the colour and design of a city's buses, the better the buses themselves. Actually, water, I feel like water is the worst. I genuinely think. And that's partly because water is quite offensive to privatise water in a way, because it's like literally the basis of life. But also, it just seems to have been mismanaged. Even given that, it seems to have been mismanaged. 36% more hours of sewage spilt in 2024 than in 2021. Does that mean the time it takes to clean it up? Is that the hours? How can you spill hours of sewage? That must be the time taken to clean it up. The average part of your water bill's 28% that goes to paying dividends and financing debt. 4.8 billion withdrawn by investors from the water system. It's interesting because we talk about the part of the public debt that goes towards interest payments, but we don't talk about the part of like our bills that goes towards interest payments on debt. This is a really useful resource. Like, water company profit margins were 27% higher than the FTSE 350 average over the last 5 years. Wessex Water. Southeast Water is... Thames Water is up there. Like, fuck Thames Water, mate. 35.5% profit margins. They literally... So, in a few months ago, right, because I'm with Thames Water, a few months ago, like, one of the pipes relatively near me, not near enough to affect me, but near enough to affect people who I know that live near me. One of the pipes burst, and this entire fucking, like, sort of dip, you know, like on a road, a sort of crossroads that was a sort of a low point, just filled up, completely flooded. And it was going for ages. And I think it happened in a couple of other places. It was because of the weather. It was like, because it was like very hot, then very cold and rainy or whatever in the middle of summer. It was weird. Climate change. And Thames Water obviously had to fix it. And they sent an email around and they were like, oh, sorry, we don't know where all our pipes are. And it's like, what? Fuck you. You're a water company. That's like you had one job, is to manage the water. You don't know where your pipes are that deliver the water. The only thing that you deliver, the only way you can deliver it is through pipes. And you haven't actually got them mapped out. So you can't fix the problem. 35.5% profit margins. Fucking ridiculous. No major reservoirs have been built since privatization. So privatization was 91 or 90. That, look at that. That is, wow. Water, mate. Jesus, I might actually go and seize Thames Water myself. Look at all those reservoirs getting built from, like, all the way up, even in the fucking 19th century. And then quite a lot over the 20th century. None. Just completely flatlined. That's insane. I cannot believe that. And the industry has gone beyond Ofwat's recommendation. I like the way the regulator in the UK recommends. The regulator Ofwat. It's like, hey guys, we'd like it if you didn't take out too much debt, but it's, you know, we can't do anything about it if you do. It's like, how about if you consistently take out more debt than we recommend, then we seize you and take you into public ownership. And all of the shareholders get wiped out and get nothing. And all of the management get wiped out and get nothing. And the CEO gets fucking fired and paraded through the streets being sprayed with sewage water. Or something. Click to view ownership data. What's this? Okay. Company South stuff. So owner Jeevan Tor, Kiran Preet, Surinder Singh, Abu Dhabi Investment Authority. It's just Canada Pension Plan. It's just foreign investors and like governments. Hong Kong Buildings Limited. I wonder why they don't care about the product. I remember this BBC doc I saw from the 70s, and they found pipes by having guys listen to the ground for the sound of them. I like that. That's old school. Black Rock, Vanguard, conspiracy theorists, put your tinfoil hats on. I can't believe how bad water privatization is. Like, I mean, we know from basic experience of bills and service, but the lack of investment, the profit margins, energy. So electricity distribution, I remember this because I remember researching the privatization before. In fact, there's this old I made this old research document about the cost of living crisis during the cost of living crisis. So, yeah, the profit margins of these energy companies. So this was 2022. They're like 40%, but it's gone up. Electricity distribution, 64% profit margin. Absolute fuckers. 21% of energy network revenue goes towards dividends and interest payment. 2 times energy investment. Energy investment was over twice as high under public ownership compared to privatization. 1.7 times how much more the proposed grid upgrade will cost compared to the publicly owned grid upgrade, assuming it stays within budget. I mean, this is ridiculous as well. So retail, one of the interesting things is that people kind of hate like British Gas and everything, but I think the retail companies don't actually really make very much money. Like, look, 3%, 5%, 1%. It's the distribution and generation and transmission. Oh, yeah, sorry. I forgot. I should just... Sorry, everyone. How dare I research this cost of living thing? Just, let's just quickly... Let's... There you go. Sorry, this is the real issue here. There's your cost of living crisis research document. The future looks troubling too. Decarbonisation requires massive and sustained investment in clean energy infrastructure, but the current system of state subsidy and guarantees for business is failing to deliver the scale of investment needed while socialising risk and privatising reward. In place of a privatised system, public power, funded by lower cost financing and planned around need, would deliver a clear, secure and affordable energy future and do so faster, cheaper and more fairly. China has been extremely successful in its solar power investments, which are largely state backed. Because it's the J curve, right? So you know the J curve where it's like, I mean, we're not like in the exchange rate. Sorry, no. So the J curve, like, okay, this is an export import J curve. Man, okay, the J curve gets used for a lot of shit. Basically, when you first invest in something, there's not much of an effect, and then eventually there's this really big effect. J, that's a J. It's obviously used for different things, like mental health things as well, or whatever. If you're like a shareholder in water and energy, and everybody's bills are going up loads, and there's really low investment, there's a cost of living crisis, do you not feel bad at all? I like the idea that all necessary utilities could form local co-ops and that those could be socialised, but barring that, water at least should be nationalised. Well, I think that I like co-ops for perhaps some stages, but I think the grid has to be centralised, and a lot of the infrastructure is like a natural monopoly, so I would say that's probably best nationally owned. I'm not against co-ops, consumer co-ops in particular, being used for the retail part. I think the generators should be worker owned as well. Buses, 135 million plus gross shareholder payouts in the 6 years since the pandemic, despite pre-tax losses of 43 million and 1.93 billion in government support. 44% of the bus industry's income comes from public money. 90% of workers have had to turn down a job due to poor quality bus services. See, that's fucked. Actually, even more than these ones. Like, what 1 in 5 workers says they've had to turn down a job due to because they can't get there. Buses were privatised and deregulated in 1986. Since then, communities and passengers have paid the price while shareholders have benefited. Fares increased faster than inflation between 1987 and 2025, funding billions in dividend payments. Private operators focus on profitable routes, abandoning less profitable services. The result, over 3,300 routes have been cut or altered, and bus vehicle kilometres have been reduced by 300 million since 2009 to 10. Whole communities have been left behind. It doesn't have to be this way. Alternatives already exist. Award-winning municipal bus companies operate across the UK, from Lothian buses to Nottingham City Transport. What's Lothian? Is this... It sounded Scottish. Is this Edinburgh? It's just Edinburgh, right? Or is it yeah. Okay, Lothian buses is Edinburgh. These are tried and tested models. Reinvesting profits back into the network, they have delivered high quality services and rising ridership numbers. They are also innovators, leading the transition to electric buses, and are early adopters of free Wi-Fi on their networks, yes. Rolling out municipal or regional public bus companies across Britain can eliminate profits being extracted from the system, deliver comprehensive coverage of low-carbon transport, and offer affordable fares. Bus and coach fares have increased by 2/3 while costs of motoring have fallen. Yeah. That actually surprises me that costs of motoring have fallen. Like, not by that much, obviously, but just, it seems like cars are pretty expensive these days. And, like, oil prices have gone up, haven't they? No, yeah. No, it's Elvish. It's Elvish. Lothian. I forgot. Number of staff employed by local bus operators has declined. Good. Okay. Despite £1.93 billion in government support during the pandemic, 1 in 5 bus routes have disappeared. It's just... people are just so reliant on buses. You know, I mean, I use buses all the time. But some people are reliant on them for their jobs. And I'm talking about cleaners and builders and basically essential workers, nurses. Elves would be the perfect custodians of private companies. They're very far-sighted, both literally and metaphorically. They'd run the businesses with honour. Honour and duty, those are absolutely vital to elves. I watched the Lord of the Rings extended edition recently, so elves are fresh in my mind. They're I think I prefer the extended edition of Fellowship. Two Towers, either way. Return of the King, the extended edition, is definitely worse. It's like all of the scenes they took out, I understand why they took them out. Anyway, we're getting distracted. Especially the scene where Saruman dies at the beginning. Like, the effects and acting are just really bad. It's really weird to see Ian McKellen act badly. And remember that he probably has to do multiple takes, even Ian McKellen. Lothian. Okay, I'm sorry. How does a bus route disappear? The road's still there. Yeah, I know you're joking. I guess it's like staffing, isn't it? Mostly. What I don't like about the Fellowship is that they put the beginning of the Two Towers book in the Fellowship film. At the end of the Fellowship film. So by the end of the Fellowship of the Ring is disbanded, which I don't like. The elves did just leave Middle-earth to get away from humans. Well, yeah, exactly. The Saruman death scene is... the whole scene is bad effects, and the acting is not great. I was like, this feels really weird and awkward. To be fair, if they delete a scene, they probably don't push it to like where it could be. They don't make it as good as it could be. So it's probably like a subpar scene because it's had less put into it. But when I first visited Edinburgh, within the first 5 minutes I saw a 20-person brawl proceeding down the street. It's very Scottish, but also Edinburgh's not... I don't know, I've never seen that in Edinburgh. I've been quite a few times. The sacking of the Shire. Yeah. But you are exhausted by the end. Like you're not ready for the sacking of the Shire. I think Peter Jackson kind of got that one right. Anyway. 79 billion estimated additional cost of privatisation from 97 to 2020. Cost of UK fares compared to those in France, 3.4 times. Man, compare it to Italy. Italian trains are so underrated. Nobody talks about Italian trains. Like, do you want to... Right. Yeah, you got to put it in capitals as well. So these things, they're fucking sick. So these ones, I think, or is it those ones, or what are the double-decker ones? So there are some with like 2 levels, and I swear these ones, and they're like fast and cheap. I remember going from like basically, let's say, Rome to Milan, and this was about 10 years ago, to be fair, but it was like 20 euros for one of these, which are like reliable and massive and fast. It was so cheap. Italian trains are amazing. French trains are good. They're better than the UK's, but yeah. Italian trains, I think, are like the gold standard in Europe, as far as I'm aware, from what I've seen. They're better than French or German, or I think Spanish trains are pretty good too. How much of your rail fare is profit? So they reckon what, like, what's that? 2%, 9%, 1%, 14%. Oh, that's there. At least I did the maths right. Oh, this is quite, I like this infographic actually. This is better. This is better than the legend that didn't distinguish between them. Huh. Hours, you could have hours of fun with this. Rolling stock companies pay out 2/5 of their revenue to investors while investment slumps. Like, what? Because I like to think that I'm, like, aware of how, let's call them neoliberals, would justify private ownership and private finance and everything. Like, I think I'm quite aware of those arguments. I do not understand how you can justify this when there's really low investment, really high borrowing costs, really high dividend payments. There's high bills and prices for consumers. It's not working. And it just enriches a few people. Like, there's no justification for this. I suppose the only thing I can think, just in the interest of being aware of counter arguments, is that, you know, with statistics, you can, as in the words of Homer Simpson, you can prove anything with statistics. 40% of all people know that. So I guess there might be some statistics around privatization that suggest that things maybe aren't as bad. I mean, I think you'd be reaching. I think you'd be cherry picking. But I'm just saying it'd be interesting to know what those are. Because sometimes you hear somebody say something on the news and you're like, oh, okay, I didn't know that statistic. The majority of rail industry income comes from direct and indirect government subsidies. Yeah, we've already seen that. Care. You know, I feel like they didn't actually talk about care that much. Russian trains are quite good. No speed trains though. Man, you need those to go through Russia, surely. I would love to take that big long train through Russia. That'd be incredible. It's a shame that everyone's at war. Imagine if the war was just like who can build the best train. The UK doesn't understand that government-owned services are assets. I think that's what's underpinning the entire ideology here, isn't it? It's like every privatization is treated as a net gain to the treasury in terms of how much it sells it for. And then government debt is treated independently of any assets. So we have this and this debt payment, but there's no notion of like what we owed or what we paid for. So therefore, you end up with this situation where the
selling something off to pay debt is deemed to be like a good move just by ignoring the assets part of the balance sheet. The best counter-argument is dismissing the very concept of statistical data. Hey, I've seen it done. Hi, short stack goblin. Passenger traffic is often operating at a loss for the taxpayer. But yeah, I think that's fine. But I do think that a lot of these services might operate at a loss, and the taxpayer pays for it because they're essential, they're vital, and you need them to reach everybody in a population, regardless of how costly it actually is. If they're out somewhere rural where it's difficult for the post office, the bus, the train, the internet to reach them, or a doctor as well. So that's costly. And also some people, even if they're maybe in an area that's a bit better provided, don't have the ability to pay. So you level, they're provided hopefully equally or at least sufficiently to everybody. And I think that means that often they tend not to make a narrow profit, but they are overall a good thing for the economy because of the externalities. Because they have knock-on effects on everything. They make everything easier. They make it easier to run a business, right? If you've got good, efficient, low-cost transport, energy, internet, that makes it easier to run a business. That makes it easier for workers to function and move around. All right, that's what you were saying, basically. I mean, freight, I suppose if freight trains are run privately, I guess that makes some sense to me. I can imagine that. But I don't know if... that's something that you just have to consider pragmatically. I'd have to know more about the whole thing and, the figures involved, whether or not that's a good idea. But it sounds like freight might be a candidate. We don't even really have rural areas in the UK because it's so small and densely populated. I don't know, like the Scottish Highlands. £21 in every £100 was taken as profit by the largest private fostering agencies last year. Director pay is 13 times higher than staff pay in private equity-owned care. I can't... 1,000 nurseries are backed by private equity. Fuck me. Why is private equity backing care homes and nurseries? All of us require care at some point in our lives. While never privatised as such, care is heavily reliant on public money even as new private for-profit ownership models grow. It is increasingly likely that the care we receive will be provided by a private equity-backed provider. 9 of the 10 largest childcare providers are backed by private equity firms looking to profit from high childcare costs and increases in public funding. The government is right to fund childcare. Without it, costs would consume half of the average wage. But when this support flows to profit-driven private equity firms, poor areas miss out, facing lower quality provision or a lack of places entirely. Private equity firms create complex financial structures. They run up debts and minimize tax liabilities. The cost of interest payments per bed for the 5 largest private equity-backed care home providers is £102 per week, amounting to around 16% of the weighted average weekly fee for residential care in the UK. So about, an eighth of the fee is going to private equity. These are often payments to related companies suggesting hidden profit extraction. There is an alternative. To eliminate profiteering, local authorities collaborate to establish in-house provision or workers' cooperatives. I think care workers, Surely if anybody deserves a fucking worker cooperative, a say in what's going on, it's got to be care workers. Like literally the most overworked, underpaid, undervalued people in modern society. I would say personally. And private equity is just like that is literally what they do. They buy up a company, they take it over, they load it up with fucking debt. Childcare costs would be half the average wage without government support. Care is inherently expensive as well. Let's not pretend it isn't. Okay, so it's not like it's going to get less expensive, but the question is, how do you fund it? How do you prioritize it? And you need the government to move on that, because care is going to take up an increasing proportion of GDP as we grow and get older, and as populations grow as well. Because there's no way to make care more efficient. So it's called Bourmore's cost disease, right? The cost of care is always like very labor intensive. It depends on like person to person interaction. Something similar applies with health and education, but care arguably even more so. So you can't actually like increase efficiency or productivity in care. What does that mean? To have fewer workers achieving the same thing, you're just reducing the quality of the service. Whereas you can in the production of cars. Someone invents a machine, it does what 10 workers did before. So the cost of cars should, fall, all else equal, as you get those efficiencies. But there's no equivalent for care. So relative to cars, care costs more. But that still means you've got more cars and at least as much care. It's a distribution thing. It's an accounting thing, really. But the point is the government has to invest directly in care, increase taxes, increase public spending in order to maintain even the same level, let alone increase it with an aging population or a society that decides to prioritize care more. But instead, we've cut the state and allowed private equity to take its place. That's the choice we've made. Private equity care homes take on higher levels of debt per patient compared to the sector average. Interest costs per week and borrowing per bed in care homes. Borrowings per bed? How can you borrow £35,000 per bed? Fuck me. That's so much. What do you mean by the voters? Like, have people voted for this? Japan trying to automate elder care with robots. Yeah, I mean, there'll be some of it, but I think people will always prefer people. Private equity takeover of fostering agency pushed company into negative equity and depleted reserves. Oh, shock. Look, private equity companies are doing what they do. Buying up a company, saddling it with debt, pushing it into negative equity while reaping the fucking rewards. Shock. Very fancy. Gold-plated beds. Also, one thing that's not on this is like, there's been so much maltreatment at the hands of care workers in these places, like undertrained care workers who aren't properly supervised or disciplined. There's been some really, really horrible stuff as well, and that's because the private companies don't give a fuck. I don't think a private monopoly is more efficient than a government one. No. I mean, clearly, that's not the case. But there have been successful examples of privatization that have relied on certain, complex combinations of state and private sector. And so if it works, there is some competition in these sectors as well. But I don't think the competition is, sometimes competition can incentivize companies to do bad things as well. People forget that. There's competition incentivized banks to give more generous mortgages in the run-up to the 2008 financial crisis. It's like to offer customers a more generous mortgage that was less sustainable. For instance, it incentivized the credit ratings companies to give the financial instruments the banks constructed based on those mortgages, incentivized them to give those AAA because they were competing with each other. And if the rate you're competing to be paid for a rating, then you'll give people a better rating. Private equity should basically be banned, I think. Land. 19,000 football pitches, the size of the NHS estate sold since 1982. See, this is just, you're just selling NHS buildings. NHS estate is estimated around 20,000 hectares in 1982, shrunk by over 70% to 6,500 today. Are there 19,000 football pitches in the UK? I'm going to say yes. How many football pitches in the UK? Oh, how many football are there? Is this? I feel like this is a question. This is like an interview question, isn't it? How many football pitches are there in the UK? How does one ban private equity? It's a good question. I think it has, to be fair, if you had more aggressive laws on like acquisitions, I think that would stop a lot of what they do. So just regulate acquisitions much more heavily so they can't buy up these companies in the first place. If I were to put my thoughts into as few words as possible, what are my thoughts on the last year or so of Labour? Lackluster, spineless, useless. Yeah, leveraged buyouts. I think that's a good point. If you're sort of going into high levels of leverage in order to buy a company, because then they just displace the debt that they've taken onto that company. £15 billion local authority assets owns assets sold since 2010. You see what I mean? It's just like now local authorities don't own anything. It's like that's such an obvious false economy. 20% of the wealth on the 2025 Sunday Times Rich list belong to people whose listed source of total wealth included land, property, or real estate. This amounts to 152 billion. In wealth from individuals whose listed source of wealth includes land or property. One of the biggest privatisations in modern British history is relatively unknown, the mass sale of public land. Since 1979, approximately 1/10 of Britain's entire territory has been sold off, from council assets to nationally owned land. By reducing public resources and concentrating ownership, this sell-off has worsened the housing crisis and helped build an economy where wealth is increasingly generated through the ownership of land and the capture of rent. The scale of privatization of public land has been matched by the sell-off of public housing. Since the introduction of the Right to Buy scheme in 1980, over 2 million social homes have been sold and at a steep discount. More than 40% of homes sold under Right to Buy are now owned by private landlords, typically offering more expensive rent and less secure tenancies. Who owns land and how they choose to use it fundamentally shapes how our economy operates and in whose benefit. To understand Rip-Off Britain, we need to understand the scale and effect of privatisation and begin to reclaim land for public benefit, affordable housing, thriving communities and healthy environments. Is selling assets ever a good idea for a government? Well, I can imagine a situation where, yeah, if they own an industry that isn't really working, you're receiving... Whoa. Hey, Costa. You're receiving... Hi, Nanak. You're receiving gender-affirming care. I think the queues in the US... I think the queues in the UK for gender-affirming care are really bad. Abigail Thorne had a video about this. And I don't think that's necessarily because our healthcare is socialised, although it's partly about the NHS. But I think we're just really transphobic here, so... Doctors just treat you like shit. So, yeah, I don't think it's much better here. I don't know about Canada. I feel like Canada might be slightly better. UK wealth is increasingly determined by land value, which makes up 55% of wealth. This is really interesting. So land increases in value, partly owing to speculation, but also owing to gains in social value. So it's like one way of measuring like our wealth as a country, because it's like, okay, so suppose like an area improves in terms of its facilities and infrastructure, and I don't know, let's say crime goes down and the schools are better and it becomes more desirable. I don't know, it's got nicer parks, it's got less pollution. Like, land values will go up. So land values are kind of a good way of tracking how the wealth of a country tends to increase. So you can see that very clearly here. Look, 2008, boom, down. Then kind of back up. Then down during the pandemic. Like, why? Like, nothing happened to the land itself. It's just the value, right? So it's a good way of tracking social value. But obviously the question is, who is this going to? So dwellings. Oh, there's actually two overlapping lines here. Dwellings, flat at about 90%, 80 to 90. Similar for other buildings, slightly lower maybe. Machinery, equipment and weapon systems, other non-produced financial assets. Financial net worth. I'm kind of... Right, okay. So that's our financial net worth. Is negative. Okay. Abigail Thorne, Philosophy Tube. Yeah. Growth of Reckoning. I haven't read that book. I have heard of it though. Is it good? DIY hormone therapy is probably the best option in the UK. I don't know enough about that, and I wouldn't want anyone to follow my such extreme medical advice, but you know, whatever works for you. Accusing social medicine countries for other procedures bad, say if you wanted knee surgery or something. I think it just varies by... I don't think... One of the things about comparing healthcare across countries is like... I learned this from health economists. It's like some countries are just really good at some treatments and really bad at others for like weird historical reasons. So I think the UK, we're good at like some... Maybe lung cancer we're like really good at lung cancer or something, and then but like the USA is really bad, but then the USA is really good at like bowel cancer and we're really bad at it. So it's like it's really difficult to compare. But I do think the NHS is underfunded and queues are longer than they should be. But I don't think that the waiting list is that bad for like vital surgery. Countries can have huge regional differences. Yeah, that's also true. Yeah. Not building but trading, real estate has far outpaced the wider economy since the global financial crisis. Gross value added. Estate agent. Oh, this is... Oh, okay. Okay. People buying and selling the same houses. This is very interesting. What's kind of interesting as well is that pre-financial crisis, the construction, this grey one, was like a bit above the whole economy. Buying, selling and renting and estate agent activities were actually slightly below it, but it's only since then estate agent activities have gone up. That's quite weird, isn't it? Because you would think that... So, to make it clear, the actual construction... Where's the construction? Construction hasn't really gone up, but estate agent activities have gone up, buying, selling and renting have gone up, implying that we're not building, but the housing market is still thriving, which implies people are buying and selling the same houses with more frequency, and estate agents are making a killing. Now, looking at that on its own, you might say that's an indicator for a housing bubble, except that there was a housing bubble here, and that this wasn't happening. So maybe it's just being ripped off by estate agents that's going on. I don't know. Hi, Connor. Research is going depressingly well. Of course, the UK is good at treating lung cancer. Don't quote me on that. That's a very vague memory. But we yeah. I mean, we've got a long history of it. Is private equity buying up homes in the UK? I should imagine so, but I'm not sure. Half of England and Scotland is owned by 1% of the population. Corporations. So, aristocracy... Wait. Oligarchs and city bankers. I mean, that is crazy. Literally just... It is interesting how little we talk about who owns what in this country. I think this is quite a good populist angle as well, right? Because you can, I mean, let's be careful, but talk about this. Look, perhaps you can, harness some anti-foreign sentiment by being like, Saudi capital owners own so much real estate and things like that, and channel it into more of a kind of anti-inequality, anti-capitalist cause. But do you think they don't care, Zero, or do you just think they just don't know? I mean, this is kind of like Gary Stevenson's point, isn't it? It's just like wealth inequality, like people own so much. The elites own so much and the people own so little. I don't know. I feel like it's potentially a winning message. Just like they're taking things from you. Well, all the foreign investment does, they are extracting value. They're not, they're extracting value rather than actually creating value. That's pretty clear. And if they're foreign, there's the narrow, because obviously it's one thing to say they're foreign, but it's not like the, I don't know, the Canadian government entirely controls a Canadian company that's invested in the UK. But there's just the narrow economic interest where they're better off just not really investing and extracting because it's propped up by taxpayer money and it's a necessity, so consumers will always pay for it. But there's also, is there some geopolitics, especially if some of these investors are government and they're like, we'd rather the UK was a bit more stagnant. I don't know. Is Nigel Farage wealthy? I think he's wealthy enough. Certainly wealthier than me. Have I seen Money and Macro's new video on Gary? I haven't watched it, but I did actually give Yuri feedback on the script. He was here earlier. I don't know if he's still here. But I think he's right that Gary's rhetoric outstrips the reality. And I think it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because I prefer it to blaming immigrants, and it's more correct. But I think in terms of things like raising revenue, a wealth tax just isn't going to do that much. And I don't know if a wealth tax is going to like increase standards of living for the average person as much as he seems to think. Germany. I think Germany has more regional equality. It has better, stronger employment and manufacturing sector. And it's got more labour-friendly policies. So it's not as fucked as the UK. I think they've got more assets. What's the... where's the G7 thing? So what's Germany's here in terms of public wealth? It's about 100% of GDP, bit more. 100% tax on rental income, isn't that quite high? 100%. Generally, isn't a wealth tax just a good idea to prevent wealth from sitting still in bank accounts instead of circulating in the economy? Well, it depends. The thing about a lot of wealth, this is one of the tricky things about a wealth tax, is that it's not actually just money in a bank account. Some of it is, but a lot of it's like assets, and they're valued often on the stock market, and those values can change a lot. So that, for me, I don't know if you're... But, I mean, obviously, yeah, like, I'm not against taxing it. I do think it would circulate money. But I think taxing income higher is a better way of increasing the marginal propensity to consume. Taxing wealth is quite tricky to do since it's hard to measure wealth. I mean, I think that land tax is the most promising way to do it. I don't know, like, stock. Also, another suggestion that I have seen is taxing stocks in kind, like actually taking stocks. Like, you hold this many stocks, then you take the stocks off them, and then you get like a sort of social wealth fund. Average DM. I am familiar with Gareth. I do actually have his book. I kind of want to chat to him at some point, but. Some kind of small wealth tax is good to get the conversation flowing that way and to normalise the idea that the ultra-wealthy can pay more. I do also think that it would be good for measuring wealth. This is one of the things that Thomas Piketty said like 10 years ago in Capital. Slavoj Žižek. I mean, I think there are a couple of things there. One, it's very much not my area. And two, I think I'm a bit below his radar. You know, he's got bigger fish to fry. That's another impression that I wish I could do, but there's no point in me doing Slavoj Žižek. I just can't. So, let's read this. Mail. Last one. 20% decline in next day first class delivery between 2013 and 2024. 27% how much Royal Mail was undervalued when the first shares were sold. Remember that, fuckers. Combined pay of 5 successive Royal Mail CEOs between 2013 and 2024 was 15.2 million. Does everyone remember when like all the like Tories and like, I don't know, loads of fucking people were really angry about Gordon Brown selling off the gold? It was just this really weird boomer talking point. It was so odd. Then they sold off Royal Mail for too little, as well as other things, and nobody cared. He sold off the gold. A privatisation of Royal Mail in 2013 was a bad deal for the public. A 2014 report by the UK's independent public spending watchdog, the National Audit Office, concluded that Royal Mail's shares were priced too cheaply, losing the public $750 million on the first day of trading. Since then, the damage and the cost to the public has only grown. The universal service obligation to deliver letters to all UK addresses 6 days a week at uniform price has been progressively abandoned. See, this is what I'm talking about. This is the equity consideration. At the same time, the contracts of ordinary posties have become less secure, according to the Postal Union, the CWU. But not everybody is losing out. Since privatisation, the bosses of Royal Mail have collected millions in pay, and the company has paid out nearly £2 billion in dividends, including to the Czech billionaire Daniel Kretinsky, who is the largest owner of Royal Mail through his company, EP Group. Privatisation has failed. It's time to return to sender. Oh! And bring Royal Mail back into public hands to deliver a reliable universal service once again. Royal Mail has paid out 96% of post-tax profits to shareholders since privatisation. So post-tax profits are, right, they go down during the financial crisis, then back up. What's the investment? The largest Royal Mail shareholder is Daniel Kretinsky's group. Jesus. So Czech billionaire owns that. He's, you know, I don't want to be horrible or stereotype, but the Czech billionaire. I mean, this guy, you want to tell me this guy's a good guy? Complaints have tripled since 2014. Shock. Yeah. Okay, so, again. Sell it off for too little, belongs to some fucking Eastern European oligarch, and the service seems to have gotten worse. They're not delivering to as many people, and the posties are worse off. There you go. There's your model of privatisation. Are there multiple Czech billionaires? Well, I should imagine so. Man, you guys do ask some random questions, don't you? Oh. Let me have some water. You can't find the page that I'm looking for, or you won't let me into it because... I had this the other day. The Forbes billionaires list seems to be gone. "16 members of the Czech billionaire list." Daniel Kretinsky is 256th in the globe, 3rd in Czech Republic. Although he's almost joint second. How can we not succumb to doomerism? I think I do think that, you know, there's things can change very quickly. You'd be surprised. And I do think people are quite hungry for change. I think it's being channeled in the wrong directions, but people are dissatisfied with the existing system for legitimate reasons. For instance, I think the Greens have a really big opportunity in the next election. Like, if Tory MPs are defecting to Reform, I think Labour MPs can defect to Green. And the Greens can put some of this stuff into action. They can improve things. I think the Tommy Robinson types would respond well to renationalising Royal Mail, bring back the postman type stuff. Yeah, I know. Like, this is the thing, isn't it? It's like, I think on the left, if there is a kind of actual failure of the left, we do fail to campaign on more common sense leftism, which I think is pretty obvious. Like having a decent job, earning money to provide for your family. Like traditions, you know, the tradition of the British postman, is that not something that kind of a lot of people identify with, that brings a smile to a lot of people's face, that is nostalgic, that is absolutely vital? My CS2 rank is I don't play CS2. It's just on my desktop, but I don't play it at all. I'm so bad at shooters. I think I'm a bit jerky, like my wrists, so the actual aiming I'm like terrible at. Have you read Marx Capital? Kind of, but like only as a reference text. EPH bought out a gas plant in my hometown, planned a massive expansion despite opposition from locals, then abandoned it mid-construction, leaving a crater in the ground when they saw a slump in dollars. Are you in the Czech Republic? Favorite game? Dark Souls 1, probably. Or Ocarina of Time. I think it's Dark Souls 1. The feeling Dark Souls 1 gave me is just like incredible. Will there be a Hollow Knight Silksong stream? I don't know. I don't know if it's that good to stream because it's quite hard. I might not do it. I haven't started it. I'm streaming Tunic at the moment, as you know. But yeah, I haven't started Hollow Knight Silksong. I just bought it because it was cheap. I'm quite... you guys ever seen that subreddit, Patient Gamers? I like that subreddit. But it's like, I don't play games when they first come out. Sometimes I'll wait like a year. Fave non-boomer game. Wait, are you saying Dark Souls 1 is a boomer game? That's crazy. Are post-Keynesians good? I'd consider myself kind of post-Keynesian, yeah. I think that they put a lot of emphasis on like government spending in order to achieve full employment. On my second channel, there's a video about behavioral science and the replication crisis. partially. It's about behavioral science more broadly. But it came out first in like 2011. I mean, Boomer's strong. That's strong. Fuck me, who knows? What am I thinking? 1 second. Let me look at this. You know, all my favourite games are old games. I have actually listed them at one point. Skies of Arcadia, Golden Sun, Super Paper Mario. I can give you Dark Souls 3. That's more modern. Dark Souls 3 has the most attuned gameplay of any FromSoft game, I think, actually. Most well calibrated. I like Outer Wilds, but the problem with Outer Wilds is that you can only really play it once, unless you want to fucking do speed runnings. We can't ever have full employment. Well, yeah, that's Kolechki's argument as well. Kolechki's argument in the political economy of full employment. You started playing Simpsons Hit and Run. See, I thought that was quite bad. Steve's video on Gary was quite weird because he just used it as an excuse to go into his Minsky model, which he always does with everything. And I don't know. I don't think it really. I don't know if like he's wrong. I don't mind the Minsky model, but it just seemed like kind of pointless. Maths. How much maths is necessary to learn economics? I mean, quite a lot of maths. Yeah, quite a lot. Beyond All Reason. I don't even think I've played this fucking game. I forgot about it. Oh, that one. Yeah. I remember it. Is that the one with the tanks and shit? Right, this is a serious stream. It's a very serious stream. The equity risk premium puzzle. My silence about it is deafening. I can't remember. Man, I honestly, there are so many papers on that thing. I literally like. They should be banned. I wish I could erase my memory of Outer Wilds so I'd experience it for the first time again. I want to play the expansion actually. So I think that we can add to our cost of living crisis document. 2025 update. Okay. Come on, we're going to do the work. We can't always game. No, that's not right. Ah. Delving into the privatization of our country and how it has affected vital services. They Let's They coined the term. Well, they didn't really coin it, but whatever. I'm a little bit. I haven't. Total Annihilation. Yeah. It is like that. Cruelty Squad. No. You know, I don't game that much. Like, I like gaming, but I don't know. I feel like I used to game loads when I was a kid, but I don't like. I can't. I don't really like to do it loads. Also, I'm just fucking like busy. I'm a little bit put off by Gary's economics after his video addressing a wealth tax had him basically saying, "I don't know, someone else figure it out." Just seems so short-sighted to not even look. I think one of the things that I have to confess frustrates me about Gary is his like utter refusal to delve into research like this report that we've looked at, which really supports his message, right, about wealth inequality and the private sector and who owns what, falling living standards. This is like directly supports his message. He just won't ever really look at this stuff or cite it. Like, and I understand that he's trying to communicate to the common person, but you don't have to put it in the every video. But like, there might be a nice one where it's like, okay, let's actually go into this. Like, there is some credible stuff behind it. Coined the term "rip off Britain" to describe the results. They look at all vital services. What is it? It's like water, energy, trains, buses, mail, care. What else? Land ownership as well. And what's this? Oh, that's just general. What's this? That's land. So we only missed land. Privatization. Generally reduced investment. While increasing debt costs relative to government ownership. So even when companies make a loss, loss and services are underperforming, more public ownership models are available from the past, other countries, and even some localities, some British localities in the present day. I published an article on economic history with a more qualitative perspective and found some peer reviewers resistant to human factors like infirm fighting and racism. Do you think that's stupid or necessary for the discipline? What do you mean? Can you explain what you mean by those human factors a bit more? I don't fully understand the question. So let's go through. Let's review these. So water, is water is possibly the worst. No, what? Why are you doing that? What's the highest profit margin? No major reservoirs have been built since privatization. Privatization. They're not counting views when an ad blocker is turned on. It's reducing views dramatically for some big channels with lots of PC-based viewership. I don't know. I don't really look too much at analytics, so I don't know too much about it. It's possible that's why my video didn't do as well, but thanks. Hi Pearl. Thanks for dropping by. We're just water is possibly the worst. The profit margins. To be fair, I can share this with you guys if you want to like look at it. Allegedly, okay. Paying off the quarter of average person's water bill. Pardon me, sorry. An average person's water bill and the so is this debt, does that include the yeah, debts and dividends accounts for over a quarter of the average person's water bill. Consistently taken on more debt than recommended by Ofwat. By the regulator Ofwat. What firms expanding into different countries was affected by racism? I can believe that, but yeah, I don't know if economists would understand that because it's not like rational. Surely the market would just favor those firms that don't engage in racism. Therefore, it would be eliminated. That's a generic European accent, by the way. Energy sees similarly high profit margins, especially in distribution and generation. You know, Britain really is a rip-off. It's quite clear that the average person's perception that the bastards are ripping us off is correct. Under nationalisation. Investment was twice as high under nationalisation. Again, despite their failure to adjust to yeah, Mad Men is quite. There's that famous scene with like Harry, isn't there, on Mad Men, where he's like, the consumer has no colour, to like a group of civil rights activists, and then they like kick him off the tour. So it was while relevant in the individual case, this was not enough to model and thus of less relevance. It's kind of weird though, because like, why would racism persist now if the market acts to get rid of it? Yeah, the ripping off is ridiculous. What's the 1 in 5? For the last 5 years. With staff numbers declining, welfares increase. Meanwhile, shareholders have received high. What is it about? Okay, 135 million in dividend payments. There are better models. The YouTube video to drop in 2026. Which YouTube video? Yeah. Yeah, well done for getting published, based abroad. There are better models. Whoops. Ah, so many typos. rail. The railway system is run terribly with a network of private contractors who do not coordinate or invest properly. The relevant Labour minister said recently it would cost like £100 billion to nationalise Thames Water. He's probably saying it's probably like if we like pay the shareholders loads. It's like, oh, we've got to give them 10 years worth of dividends if we buy it out. It's like, no, you don't. You're the government. You can pay them in water when we hose them down in the public square. So the majority, yeah. Oh yeah. And indeed would not be profitable without said subsidies. The care sector are somehow allowed to which sucks out money that could be used for better services. They tend to train employees with a resultant decline in the quality of service. All shareholders get paid off. Yeah. Yeah, they would get paid off if they've been doing a good job. It would scare the bond market. The thing is, the bond market settled down when the Bank of England intervened. It's just like, oh, man, it's just like we're managing our own decline. It's almost deliberately so that we're like managing our own decline. We're turning ourselves into a sort of poorer country, a poor, corrupt country. And most large care providers are now backed. Private equity. Okay. land. Large amounts of local authority and state land have been sold off over the past few decades. Real estate has far outpaced the white. Most land in England and Scotland is owned by 1% of the population. The real estate thrives with privatized home ownership, and most UK wealth now channeled through private land values. People in the UK are there through land ownership. Okay, Mail. The most recent case, Royal Mail, was sold off in 2013 for a lower price than it should have been. Since then, complaints have risen as further out routes have been abandoned. Czech billionaire. Shall we copy and paste this so that we get the accents? Stake in the company. Complaints have risen as further out routes have been abandoned and deliveries have become slower. Stake in the company. Paid highly, along with private shareholders. Okay. There's an argument to be made that managed decline is one of the few standouts of Starmerism. Yeah, I don't know. It does seem to be that. And I think it is the case that the elites would rather see, their ownership shares concentrate while they, don't do anything to improve the country, because then the poors will get too many ideas. So it's one thing, this was Kolechki's argument, which we were kind of talking about before. It's one thing to say, well, it would be ad block tax. Hey, thank you. It's one thing to say that, that we'd all be better off if we had mass investment. And I strongly believe that. I think, if you invested more in, health and education and infrastructure, everything that we've talked about today, you would have improved outcomes for everybody and probably improved outcomes for the rich as well. But they prefer to have improved outcomes relative to everybody else. So not just more income and wealth, but also just the political power they have from people not really having much to get by on, and from being in insecure work. As an outsider of the UK, it seems the problem is you've caught the austerity virus. We talk the talk over here, but we continue to deficit spend anyway, which helps us get on. Yeah, it's strange. So I don't know if you missed it, Connor, but there is, look, public wealth in the USA has actually kind of gone up. Well, since 60s. It went up in the 60s. The sort of bold turquoise. And it's kind of, it did decline like in the 80s and 90s, but then it sort of went back up in the 2000s, and it's kind of steady. It was like, what, 120% in 1960? It's probably similar now, if not higher. So, yeah, pretty crazy. Man, PFI, God, they haven't even spoken about PFI. I mean, this is about utilities, isn't it? But there's obviously health as well, education. Yeah. I don't know if I can be bothered to read my cost of living research document again, but maybe I will. Koletsky. Honestly, everybody has a different pronunciation of Koletsky. Koletsky. Hey, what's going on with the chat? Where's chat gone? Where's chat disappeared? That's weird. Alright, it's fine. I'm going to end the stream anyway. Thanks for joining, though, on this depressing review of the UK and UK utilities. I thought it was a good report. If I had the wherewithal, I'd go into more detail on some of the data, but I think that will require a lot of sleuthing. Anyway,